morning, everyone. So to start our asynchronous activity or our asynchronous lesson for the next topic in Science 8, I would like to greet everyone a pleasant day. Kung kailan nyo man ito i-review kasi asynchronous nga tayo. So, i-ano ko lang, i-congratulate ko lang lahat ng nakakuha ng passing scores for our last exam that you have taken. And another is yung mga hindi naging honest diyan ha. Alam mo kung sino kayo. Joke lang. Ayan. So, since we are experiencing our connections na hindi ganun ka stable, katulad with subscriptions from Converge and I think Sky Broadband, medyo nahihirapan kayong mag-connect. The school opted to make it an asynchronous activity or make it an asynchronous lesson for the whole week. Later on, after you have viewed our lesson or our video, my video for science, I will be assigning activities for in Google Drive regarding the lesson that we had. Okay, start na tayo with our lesson. Okay, so last time we have already discussed what is power, what is work, and what is energy. But then just a brief description of energy. So energy is the ability to do work. Without energy, there is no chance that work will be done. Ganun ang ibig sabihin with energy. So mostly sa nakakuha ng tamang sagot doon, siguro nakinig talaga sa video na ginawa ko before the day ng exam. Alright, so start na tayo. So what is kinetic and potential energy? Before that, let's define what is kinetic and potential energy. So kinetic energy is the energy in motion. Ibig sabihin kapag ang object ay gumagalaw or kapag ikaw ay gumagalaw, you are having kinetic energy. While potential energy is energy stored. Ibig sabihin, hindi talaga siya tinatawag na energy at rest, but then energy stored. Kasi ang energy daw na yon could do work even though it is not moving or it is not in motion. Katulad na lang ng rubber bands natin. Kapag stretch natin yung rubber band, babalik siya sa kanyang original state, which is kung bilog. Ayan. And another one is the spring. Kung may spring kayong nakakita, katulad nito, a stapler has spring. Kapag hindi siya nagagalaw or kapag hindi siya nagagalaw or in motion, it is just at rest. It is still having energy. But then kapag pinul mo siya, mahihirapan kang bumabalik pa din siya sa original state niya. So that is your potential energy. Mahihirapan kang mag-stretch ang spring even though you can stretch it, but then there is a force required para magkaroon ka ng para ma-stretch mo yung spring na yon. Kasi nga, we are saying that springs or elastics have potential energy. Alright. Okay, so what is energy? Energy is the ability to do work, as what I said. Everything that happens in the world uses energy. And most of the time, we can't see energy, but it is everywhere around us. Lahat ng ginagawa natin, lahat ng nakikita natin, lahat ng nararamdaman natin contains energy. Kahit hindi man natin siya makita, it is still there. Kasi, because with the definition of the law of conservation of energy, energy is never created nor destroyed. This is the law of conservation of energy. It can be stored or transferred. Kaya tayo may tinatawag na heat energy, light energy, mechanical energy, so on and so forth. Okay. So, hindi daw nagagawa or hindi nakikreate ang energy, nor it is destroyed. Hindi daw siya nasisira. But, pwede siyang ilipat into other forms of energy or it could be stored katulad nga ng potential energy. Ayan, so here are some things that are obviously having energy. So batteries stores energy. This car uses a lot of energy because it is moving. So if we are going to be saying that what type of energy is the car having when it is moving, it is kinetic energy. And even a sleeping puppy stores energy para makagalaw siya afterwards. So we get our energy from food. As people and animals get our energy from food. While ang other forms of mechanical and electricity will have a different source of energy. But for us, it is food. All matters is made up of particles and the particles never stop moving. Meron naman talagang even gases has the most movement of molecules when it comes to the three forms of matter. So gases has the most molecule movement while solid has lesser. But hindi sinasabi na hindi gumagalaw ang solid. It is just a rigid shape, kumbaga. But it is not said that those shapes or those molecules are not moving. Especially kapag nag-change siya into other chemical compounds or into other chemical states. Okay, so how is energy divided? So energy is divided into potential energy when it is not moving and kinetic energy when it is in motion. So potential energy is the energy stored in an object. Kahit na tayo ay natutulog, we are storing energy para makagalaw tayo the next day. Potential but, hindi ibig sabihin na tayo ay hindi gumagalaw, wala na tayong energy. Potential means the energy has the ability to do something useful later on. Kaya nga siya tinawag na potential. Example, you have the potential to dance. Hindi mo siya pinapakita na you are dancing, but then, marunong kang sumayaw. You have the potential to dance kahit na hindi ka gaanong magaling on that specific time period. But eventually, afterwards, later on, your potentiality to dance is going to show. Ganun ang ibig sabihin ng potential energy. So, examples of potential energy is a stretched rubber band. Kapag stretch mo yung rubber band, di ba may resistance or nagre-resist na stretch kapag na-stretch ang rubber band? Kasi, babalik siya sa original niyang state which is yung relaxed state ng isang rubber. So, water at the top of the waterfalls is a potential energy. A yo-yo held in your hand contains potential energy, and a draw bow and an arrow. Yung hinila mo yung bow and arrow na hindi mo pa siya binibitawan. Sana all, hindi binibitawan. Ayan. Okay. So next, the higher an object, the more potential energy it has. Ibig sabihin, kung saan siya binitawan at mas mataas, the higher its potential energy. The more mass of an object has more potential energy it has. Okay, balikan natin yung formula ng potential energy which is 1/2 mass times times G times H or height. So ganun ang magva-vary, ganun tayo magko-compare ng potential energy kasi nga potential energy is equal to lagay ko lang wait. Ano ko lang ha. Wait lang po. Okay. Balikan natin. So, potential energy, hindi ko mahanap yung yung pen ko. Okay, so yan muna natin. So, potential energy is equal to mass times acceleration due to gravity times height. So, since nasa kabilang portion or nasa kabilang part ng ating okay, so using the formula of potential energy is equal to mass times G times height, wherein nasa kabilang portion yung nasa kabilang portion yung mass, acceleration due to gravity, and height, ibig sabihin, it is directly proportional. Ibig sabihin, once may tumaas na isang variable dito, ibig sabihin, tataas din yung potential energy. The heavier the object, the higher its potential energy, whether its height is lower, but then the object is heavy. Potential energy would still be higher. So kapag ang height naman is higher, but then yung mass ng object is lower or lesser, potential energy would still be higher kasi higher nga yung ano natin, yung height ng ano, yung height ng pinaglaglagan ng object natin. So that is potential energy. Whether the two is increased, also potential energy will be increased. Ganun ang nangyayari when it comes to, kasi nga directly proportional. What happens with, if there is an increase in potential energy, there is also a possibility that there is an increase in mass or in height or both. Ganun ang nangyayari. Okay. So, punta tayo sa next slide. So, which object has most potential energy? Bigyan ko kayo ng 5 seconds to answer. Very good. A or picture A contains higher potential energy than picture B because picture A is heavier compared to picture B, which is a feather, is lighter. Ayan. So, tingnan natin kung ang tama ba ang naging sagot ninyo. Ayan. So, the brick has more mass than the feather, therefore more potential energy is contained in the feather. Changing an object's height can change its potential energy. Whether kung the more height or the higher the object falls, potential energy could also be higher. So if you want to drop an apple from the top of one of these three things, where will the most potential energy be? In a ba or in a skyscraper, on top of a chair, or in a crane, at the top of the crane. So saan ba saan ang apple magkakaroon ng highest potential energy on the three pictures? Okay, so in a skyscraper, absolutely, kasi the higher the object, the more potential energy. Ikaw nga, pag naglaglag ka ng apple or pag naglaglag ka ng something on top of a chair, what do you think will happen to the apple? It will just bounce. But the higher it goes, ang nangyayari doon sa potential energy na yon, it will be released kapag nabagsak na yung apple sa concrete. Mababasag yung apple. Compared nang binagsak mo siya doon lang sa top of the chair. Ayan. So, ganun ang ibig sabihin ng potential energy. The energy is stored while the apple is being dropped. The higher the object or the higher the where the object has fallen, the greater its potential energy. Ayan. So, potential energy converted to kinetic energy, paano ba? So, when stored energy begins, katulad nga ng sinabi natin kanina with the law of conservation of energy, energy is not created nor destroyed. So, kapag potential energy to kinetic energy, paano natin siya gagawin? So, when stored energy begins to move, the object now transfer from potential energy to kinetic energy. Example tayo, we are just standing. Ibig sabihin, we are storing potential energy. Tapos yung potential energy na yon could be converted into kinetic energy once we start moving or kapag tayo ay tumakbo or naglakad. Example, we are standing naghihintay tayo ng tricycle sa isang madilim na sulok. Pagkatapos, may biglang nagsabi sa atin, hold up to. Your tendency is to move. Therefore, your potential energy in standing, the energy that is stored, is converted into kinetic energy kasi it is our response to flee from danger. Kasi nga, hinuhold up nga tayo. Ayaw nating makuha yung mga cellphone natin at mga kung anumang valuables natin. Ayan. So, kinetic energy is the energy. Punta naman tayo sa kinetic energy. Kinetic energy is the energy of a moving object. Any object or any person, any animal that is moving is having or contains kinetic energy. Kinetic means movement. Kanina, potential is para mamaya or you can use it later. Ganon ang ibig sabihin ng potential. While kinetic energy is the energy that is moving or it is movement. When stored energy is being used up, it is making things move or happen. Ayan. So examples of kinetic energy, here are the pictures. When you are skiing, when you are riding a motorcycle na tumatakbo, you are running, and when you are slipping, yung nadulas ka. those types of kinetic energy are energy that has displacement. Ibig sabihin, you travel some time in a specific amount of time. Ganon. Okay, so the faster the object moves, the more kinetic energy is produced. So kapag ikaw ay naglalakad lang, you are still producing kinetic energy, but when a person is running, compared to you walking, yung taong tumatakbo has more kinetic energy compared than yung taong naglalakad. So the greater the mass of the speed of an object, the more kinetic energy will be. Again, punta naman tayo sa formula ng kinetic energy. Wherein kinetic energy, or KE, is equal to 1/2 mass times velocity squared. So, ganito ang kinetic energy natin. So, kinetic energy is 1/2 mass times your velocity squared. So, nakikita nyo yung mass and velocity. Mass and velocity is directly proportional to your kinetic energy. Therefore, the heavier the object, the faster the object will have greater kinetic energy. Ayan. So, 1/2, dinidivide na lang siya by 2. Okay. So, the greater the mass of the speed of an object, the more kinetic energy there will be. Okay. So, when these objects move at the same speed, which will have more kinetic energy? Ayan. So, balikan natin yung formula wherein directly proportional ang mass and velocity. But then, here, the same ang velocity ng dalawang object. So, which object do you think will have greater kinetic energy? Is it the truck or the car? Okay, so the answer is the car. The semi-truck, the truck, sorry. The semi-truck has more mass, therefore, more kinetic energy, as what we've said on the formula. Directly proportional nga. The more mass, the more kinetic energy. Kasi nga pareho sila ng velocity or pareho sila ng speed. The object has the most kinetic energy when its movement is the greatest. So, when the object has least potential energy, it has most kinetic energy. So, ibig sabihin, kung less ang potential energy ng object na yan, ang kinetic energy niya is more compared to an object that has more potential energy, it will have lesser kinetic energy. So, an object, therefore, ang ibig sabihin yan is potential energy is equal to 1 over kinetic energy. Ibig sabihin, they are inversely proportional. Kung sino yung mas mataas, or potential energy is equal to 1 over kinetic energy. Ibig sabihin, they are inversely proportional. Or, in other books, you could see that PE is inversely proportional with KE. Itong nasa baba. Yung may underline. Ayan. So, PE is equal to, is indirectly proportional to your KE. Ayan. So, ganun ang ibig sabihin ng ating comparison with potential and kinetic energy. So, most kinetic energy has its movement when its movement is the greatest. So, ang naglalabas ng more kinetic energy, yung movement niya is greatest. Ayan. So, kung tayo ay tumatakbo or tayo ay sumasakay sa mas matulin na sasakyan, those objects will tend to produce more kinetic energy compared sa mas mga mabagal na objects. Okay, so sample problem. Calculate the kinetic energy of 1,000 kilogram car traveling at 60 kilometers per hour. Number 2, if a 0.2 kilogram ball is thrown with a velocity of 6 meters per second, what is its kinetic energy? The next one, what is the potential energy of a 0.3 kilogram ball lifted to a height of 5 meters above the ground? And the last one, a 1.5 kilogram book on top a shelf has potential energy of 29.4 joules. How high is the shelf? Okay, so You can take a screenshot of the sample problems and then you can send it on Google Classroom. I will also have an assignment doon sa Google Classroom so that doon kayo mag-upload. Okay? Take a screenshot and then answer the following sample problems. Kasi na-discuss ko na kung paano kayo mag-solve ng kinetic energy and potential energy. What you will do next is to solve. Alam nyo na yan. Alam nyo na kung paano gawin yan. Okay. Take a screenshot and then answer. The next. A water bottle is knocked off a desk when When does the bottle have the most kinetic energy? Kailan daw siya nagkaroon ng most kinetic energy? At the top of the fall, in the middle of the fall, and at the bottom of the fall. Saan ba siya ang nagkaroon ng mas malaki or mas mataas na kinetic energy? Saan? Okay, it's at the bottom of the fall. Ibig sabihin, kapag nasa baba na yung objects, they would tend to have most kinetic energy compared doon sa nagtatravel siya. Kasi kapag nag-fall ang isang object, it is having potential energy. Kapag bumagsak na siya, ibig sabihin, it is having kinetic energy. So it has the most kinetic energy when its movement and speed are greatest, which is at the bottom of the fall right before it hits the ground. Ayan. So when the object has the least potential energy is when it has the most kinetic energy. So least potential energy meron doon sa pinaka malapit na siyang mag-hit the ground, and it has the most kinetic energy doon sa malapit na siyang mag-hit the ground. So at the bottom of the fall. Higher ang potential energy niya kapag siya ay in the middle of the fall. Okay? Kapag lower naman ang kinetic energy kapag in the middle of the fall. Kapag nag-start ang fall, it has zero. It has potential energy, but more ang kinetic energy kapag nahulog kapag nag-start siya mahulog or start of the fall, ang bottle mo, it will have kinetic energy but lesser potential energy. Okay. So the most kinetic energy is before it hits the ground, and the least potential energy is before it hits the ground also. Okay. So roller coasters. So when does the train on this roller coaster have the most potential energy? Kailan ba? It is at the very top. Most potential energy kasi nga, it has the least kinetic energy at the top. So the higher the train is lifted by the motor, the more potential energy is produced. Katulad nga ng sinabi kanina. The higher the object, the more potential energy it has. And the larger or the heavier the object, the more potential energy it has. So at the bottom of the hill, the train has a huge amount of potential energy, but it has a little kinetic energy. Tatak. At the bottom naman, will have larger amount of kinetic energy and lesser amount of potential energy. Ayan. So kapag nasa top pala ang isang object, they have the most potential energy. Okay? Kapag nasa pinakababa, it has the least. Compare naman sa kinetic, kapag nasa mataas na portion or na mataas na height ang ating object, it has the least kinetic energy. Kapag malapit na siya mag-reach sa ground, ibig sabihin, it is the fastest. Mas mataas ang velocity kapag before it reach the ground, it will have the least or the most kinetic energy. Kasi nga, kapag ang isang object ay nahuhulog, dumadagdag ang kanyang speed. Ayan. So, formula natin ng speed is distance over time. So, the faster the object over time, the more malayo and then the less time spent will have faster speed. Ganun ang nangyayari. Okay. As the train accelerates down the hill, the potential energy is converted into kinetic energy, as what we said earlier. There is very little potential energy at the bottom of the hill, but there is a great amount of kinetic energy. Yan. Kanina, sinasabi na potential energy daw is highest kapag nasa top or nasa mataas na portion ang isang object. Highest potential energy. Kapag nasa baba, it has the lowest potential energy. Ngayon, magkaiba naman, opposite naman, kasi nga inversely proportional ang ating kinetic with potential energy. Kapag nasa taas naman, or pinakatuktok naman ang ating object, it has the least kinetic energy. Tapos sa pinakababa, or pinaka-bottom, will have, um, the more kinetic energy, most kinetic energy. Yan. So when does the train on this roller coaster have the most kinetic energy? When it is moving the fastest, or when it is moving the least when does it have the least potential energy? Yan. First answer muna natin kung ano, most kinetic energy. Syempre at the bottom, wherein ang potential energy is the least. So when it is moving the fastest, it has the kinetic energy is also greatest. Ayan. Ayan. So, balikan natin summarizing natin. So, all energy is divided into two types, wherein these are potential or stored energy and kinetic or energy in motion. So, potential energy is stored in an object. Ibig sabihin, the higher the object, yes, the higher the height of the object wherein it is going to fall, will have the highest potential energy. And kinetic energy is the energy of the moving object, the fastest. The more na mas mabilis, the more ang kinetic energy that is being produced. So energy is never created or destroyed. It is always stored or transferred. That is your law of conservation of energy. So again, law of conservation of energy. Energy is never created nor destroyed, but it is always stored or transferred. Yan. So hindi natin pwedeng sirain or hindi pwedeng masira ang kinetic energy, ang lahat ng forms of energy, but it can be transferred into other forms. But then meron lang tayong dalawang type. Yung dalawang type na yon is potential and kinetic. So dalawa lang yan. Okay. So instructions lang before we end this video. Ibibigay ko yung link doon sa sasagutan. Take a screenshot of the problem solving or the word problem, and then write your answer and solution. This time, i-require ko kayo na mag-solve. Hindi pwedeng answers na lang kasi yung iba namimihasa. Ayan. So, ganun na lang ang gagawin natin. You will be assigned an assignment in Google Classroom, and then you can answer that one. Okay? So, if you have questions, take a screenshot of that specific question and then send it to me via Messenger para para ma-clear ko yung tanong ninyo. Okay? Another, regarding the Math and Science Month celebration, yung ating TikTok challenge and ating vlog contest and yung mask making contest will be due tomorrow, Tuesday, para ma-judge na siya, and then it will be featured on the Facebook Live on Wednesday. Ayan. So, if you have any questions regarding that, mechanics and all, pwede nyong isend sa akin through Messenger later on. Okay? If you that's it, and see you on our next synchronous class. Bye-bye.